This story takes place when I was 19 years old. At the time, I was dating a guy, and it had only been a couple of months. My parents had gone to a trip to visit family in the US. I grew up in Mexico. I decided to sneak my then boyfriend into the house to spend a week with me while they were gone. I never would have expected what happened. My parents left me their car, my first ever, and my boyfriend, who used to be a professional level bodybuilder and trainer, knew a lot of shady people. One night he tells me this friend wants to meet up in a city. It's about a half-hour-ish drive from the town I lived in. As I was the one with the car, I was down to drive him and meet his friend. We met at a shady bar in a so-so part of the city. I was instantly uncomfortable with this guy. He was too familiar, too comfortable, too obnoxious to everyone, myself included. All of a sudden, after a private talk outside between him and my then boyfriend, my boyfriend approaches me and says that we need to give him a ride back to my place. I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable with this. He was a bit nervous as he tells me quietly to shush. This isn't someone we can afford to offend. I ask why he can't drive himself, to which I'm told he's too intoxicated and needs a private setting to talk. As dumb as I was, I ended up agreeing. I was very uncomfortable and had a terrible feeling the whole way home, which my boyfriend drove. We get home, they sit outside, and suddenly this man starts demanding I cook him dinner. I was a very obstinate teen. I hated, and still do, being told what to do. As I began to deny him, my ex-boyfriend looks at me, a bit pale, and shakes his head. I go in, fuming at that order and feeling bossed around in my own home, and then I make them a simple dinner. After his friend left, I learned from my ex-boyfriend that that guy was the head narco of our city. I mean, the head honcho. I was livid he brought this guy to my family's home. He was very pushy, and without words, slightly threatening. So I strongly feel that if I had made a mistake, it very well could have ended terribly for me. This happened to me about 2 to 3 years ago. When I was 16, I used to work at a fast food restaurant. I live in a place where we have all seasons. At this point in time, it was winter, so it got dark pretty early, like around 5 to 6 p.m. I was called to come into work this particular day, but the weather was kind of bad, causing us to not have any customers. As a result, we had to close the store early. It was about 5:30 p.m. when my manager left, locking the store and making me wait outside for my ride. About 20 minutes had passed since she left, and I was really cold. So I decided, regrettably, that I would walk to a friend's house just a few blocks away. About a 10-minute walk, and I would wait for my ride there. The store I worked at was on a busy street that was near a residential neighborhood. As I walk away from the store, I started walking down the residential street behind the store. I was walking on the sidewalk to the left of the street, as the sidewalk on the other side had woods behind it. It was convenient as well, because on the left side of the street was my store, and there were no street lights. I walked about 3/4 of the block when I got this feeling that I was being watched. The neighborhood was really dark, and at this point, I'd pretty much reached the end of the block, and I was getting ready to cross the street when I noticed the silhouette of someone walking on the right side of the road near the woods. They were about 5'9" to 5'10", looked to be maybe 180 or 200 pounds. I couldn't make out any features though. I'm the type of person who's very aware of their surroundings and slightly paranoid as I've been followed, almost kidnapped, stalked, and whatever else. You get the gist. So when I noticed him, I stopped walking and immediately got a sick feeling in my stomach. The man then noticed me and proceeded to walk slowly and yell out to me. He yells, "Yo, come here. I want to talk to you." "No, I'm good. I'm only 16, I yell back. I then turn around and start walking back to my store. He continues to yell things at me, trying to convince me to come to him. At that point, something in me told me to run, and I did just that. As I'm running, I know I shouldn't have, but I turned my head to see if he was actually chasing me, and to my horror, he was. So I turned up the speed and run as fast as I can. Thankfully, as I reached the store, my ride had pulled up, so I ran to the car. As I tried to get in, the door was locked. It took about 20 seconds for them to unlock the car, and it felt like hours. Eventually I got in and just broke down, crying. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of out of shape, so my back was hurting from breathing so hard, and I was all frazzled. This was the first time I was chased on foot, and let me tell you, it's so much more scary, surreal, and intense being chased on foot than someone chasing you by car. Still, to this day, I have added trauma from this incident, and it makes it hard to go anywhere by myself, especially in the dark. So, to the man that chased after me in the dark, let's not meet again. My 3-year-old son suffered from chronic ear infections last year, which led him to having high fevers. I slept with him on this particular night because I needed to give him Tylenol throughout the night to keep his fever down and to keep him comfortable. I set my alarm to wake me up at around 2:30 a.m. When I woke up, I went into the kitchen to get the Tylenol. I noticed a bright light shining into the apartment from our deck door, which also illuminated part of the woods behind the apartment. When I went over to see what it was, it turned out to be a car with those bright LED headlights in the parking lot to the far back right of the apartment. I figured they were dropping someone off. I saw the movement of what resembled a dog walking around near the woods. I started to think that the lady who usually walks her dog, a cute little corgi, in that area, purposely faced her car in that direction so she could see while she walked her dog. As it got closer, I realized that there was nobody out there walking a dog, and there was no dog. I don't know what it was that I saw, but I'll describe it in the best way I can. At first, it looked just like a dog, corgi size, but as it walked closer, it looked like your average house cat. Then it looked like a black bear, and then it looked like a koala. I live in New Jersey, and there are no wild koalas here. At this point, my heart is pounding out of my chest, and I'm scared. The fear I felt was like a primal type of fear that I've never felt before. I ran to my bedroom to wake up my boyfriend, and I shook him awake very roughly. I said, "You gotta come see this." He was a bit annoyed with me. When we look outside together, we see this thing getting closer, and it looks like a skunk now. White stripe down the center with a perky, fluffy tail. I said, "Oh, it's just a skunk," with a little chuckle. I felt a bit embarrassed that I woke him up over a damn skunk, but at that moment, I also felt relieved. However, I was mistaken. As it walked, it looked as if it was struggling to find a form. I thought it looked like it was falling apart, but also coming back together again at the same time. I know this doesn't make sense, but it's hard to find the words for what we saw. After the skunk formation, it looked like a person crawling on the ground with some type of fur or skin attached to them around the leg. Then it changed again, and it looked like a raccoon, groundhog, black bear, cat, koala, deer, and skunk. The part that stuck out to me the most was that whatever it was seemed to be coming apart or shedding, but at the same time it was growing. Whoever had their headlights on turned them off as it went deeper into the woods. This happened pretty quick. I'd say it was only about a couple of minutes from start to finish. My boyfriend ended up going back to bed, but I couldn't sleep after that. So I grabbed a flashlight and shined it into the woods to see if I could see it again, but it was gone. I also opened the door to see if I could hear anything, but I couldn't. It was very quiet. I had a very hard time going back to sleep that night. My boyfriend wasn't scared, but he was confused and stunned. He didn't know what to make of it. I was scared and creeped out. I know if I hadn't woken him up to see it for himself, he most likely wouldn't believe me and would have chalked it all up to me being groggy from just waking up, or possibly it just being an animal. Unfortunately, I know what I saw, and I'll never forget it. I was 23 and had a long-distance boyfriend. He would come and see me, and on this day we parked outside of a natural trail and fooled around in the car briefly before I exited. None of the vehicles in the lot appeared to be occupied, but I was wrong. I'm about to get out of the car and decide to grab my knife out of my bag before I start walking the trail. I normally wouldn't do that. I also decided to put a bigger t-shirt over my tank top. I said goodbye to my boyfriend and started down the trail. I wanted to walk before going home. This isn't a hidden trail. This is a populated area. If you run about a minute down the road from the trail entrance, you're outside a business. As I'm walking, I start to sense someone is behind me. I'm currently holding my knife in front of my body. I continue walking and finally look back to see a middle-aged man following me. As I pick up speed, he does as well. I tell myself I'm being paranoid. It's the middle of the day. How would he even do anything to me? Because he continues to follow and I see a bench coming up, I decide that the best thing to do is to hurry up to the bench that's facing the trail and hold my knife out in front of me in an obvious way. I cannot express to you how shocked I was to see, when I sat down and he saw my knife, he put an even larger knife into his pocket. I couldn't believe it. He saw the face I made, and he ran off immediately to an adjacent trail that was deeper into the wooded area. I got up and started running the main trail he'd followed me down. When I got to the parking lot, there was one vehicle. A truck, running, with no one inside. I'm guessing this was his vehicle. I continued running until I was in the middle of town. I don't know what to make of this. Surely if he got me there, someone would have heard or seen it. Are people really that bold? I also think he may have confused me for a sex worker, because he may have seen me in the car. Are there any thoughts?